On this ride, I made my way back to baseline.
You're doing okay. Just keep it online. There we go, that's chill.
What can be said about Baseline Mountain? It's relentlessly steep, it's incredibly loose, it's the kind of natural fall line style of riding that initially, after riding it for the first time last year, I honestly didn't care for. It seemed to me that compared to the more manicured flow trails or twisty natural single track of other riding destinations, that the trail building was, well, maybe a little lazy. But for some reason, I couldn't get that place out of my head. It had burrowed in there, demanding, against what I assumed was better judgment, that I go back. So here we are. It's the Baseline Poker Rally. Often when people talk about riding Baseline, the brutality of the trails is at the top of that list. But community always seems to be mentioned in the same breath. And I'm starting to understand why. My first visit out here was insane. I showed up fully expecting to pedal, but everyone was so welcoming. Within minutes, I was shuttling up with a bunch of locals who were ready to tow me down their favorite tracks.
Oh, that's pretty spicy.
Literally every single person that I met was a great time and super willing to help a new face explore the mountain that they love so much. And this trip was no different. Now this first lap is a bit of a classic warm-up. It's Yoga Pants to Old DH to Lower Canada Cup. And while Yoga Pants gets a blue rating, there are quite a few black or, depending on your comfort level with steeps, arguably even double black options to be found. Now, with all of this steepness, inevitably you're gonna see ruts. Riders are gonna be dragging down a fair bit of dirt with them as they go. But thanks to a combination of weather and a lot of effort from their trail crews, everything was running incredibly well.
Getting loose!
When I rode here last year, we were leaving 30-second dust gaps in the clear cut. And in contrast, this year, while it's been pretty wet, Baseline handles that moisture incredibly well, even in spots where it's muddy.
The mud up here is so good.
It's the kind of wet, loamy mud that your tires can clear really easily and still largely find traction in. Unfortunately, even the best conditions in the world can't save us from ourselves.
Oops. I'm trying to keep up with you. It's too fast for the first lap.
So, what do you do after a crash? You blame the bike and you get a new one. And as luck would have it, Rocky Mountain was present with demos of the new Altitude, a bike that, to me, is among the most enticing new bikes in the market.
What lap am I now accidentally doing because I just hopped in a train?
The last gen Altitude would have actually won out over my Ripmo had the Ripmos not been on sale at the time. So I have been dying to test out this newest gen since we first saw the new frame under Remy Gauvin in that leaked photo from last year.
Wow, you really can. Just let this guy eat.
While this lap wasn't the gnarliest, it definitely gave me an appreciation for the attributes of the bike. The build I'm demoing here is the C50, and I have to say the build is pretty well sorted. The Fox Performance forks felt nicely supple while still remaining pretty easy to pop and pick up, and the Float X kept the rear end controlled while still helping the bike to feel surprisingly light at speed. As far as Geo goes, I only rode the bike in the highest and steepest setting, but I have to say I really wasn't left wanting. It was plenty low and slack. One of the more interesting geometry figures to me is that 450 mil chainstay on the size large. This bike has a very long wheelbase, and you absolutely notice that. It is so stable at speed, it will eat whatever you put in front of it. But despite that, the longer chainstay does not feel like it's too much to throw through corners. I was still able to push the bike pretty easily, not that I'm the best at that. And it made me feel really nice and centered in the bike. As a result, I had more room to move around, which gave me more room for error, which I really appreciated. That said, it's not without its faults. The geometry kind of shoves the saddle right up your ass. It's great for climbing, but it was definitely in my way descending. You likely could mediate this with a longer dropper or slamming your seat post, but I'd have to test it to know for sure, and I can only really comment on my experience this day. As far as pedaling is concerned, I didn't really get a chance to do any sustained climbing on it, but there were a couple of punchier moments, and in these I was incredibly impressed with the amount of traction available. But I also noticed a lot of pedal bob, which I don't know if that's going to have a huge impact over longer sustained climbs, but psychologically it certainly made me feel like it might not be the sprightliest of climbers.
So many people.
Corner back there.
In the end, I really regret not taking this bike out for another lap on something steeper like Mr. Lifto, but I didn't want to monopolize one of only 2 frames available for the literally hundreds of people that were on the mountain that day.
You got this.
Lots of traction.
A lot easier than you think, eh?
Yeah!
While I didn't get a chance to ride Lifto on the altitude, I did get a chance to ride it on my Ripmo. And if you've been following the channel, you know that I've made some changes to my setup after last season. In fact, I will pretty much tell anybody who will listen about the changes that I made to my Ripmo after last season.
I gotta say, like, when I came here the first time last year, I was running SLX brakes. I had 60 mil fork and my stem was quite a bit lower.
Regardless, I made these changes because of baseline.
Okay, you're doing okay. You're doing okay. Just keep it online.
Riding the track rewards last year was a clear lesson that a higher and slacker front end would make riding steeps a lot more enjoyable.
Yeah, he's not kidding. Go as slow as possible.
I also found that hand fatigue was a factor with my SLX brakes. So, more stack, 10 mil more of travel, and the Hayes Dominion A4s have been an incredible trio to alleviate all of those pain points. Now, the changes that I made were massively noticeable improvements at baseline, while remaining largely invisible in less steep environments. So, pretty much perfect. That said, an extra half a degree angle set wouldn't hurt my confidence at speed, but I'm gonna ride the bike as is for now and see where I land after a few bike park days.
Holy Yo! That's steep.
So coming back to the altitude, comparing across the all-mountain and enduro genres, the big difference between the 2 bikes really did just boil down to speed. If you want to go faster or ride a lot of park, the altitude makes a ton of sense.
Okay, there were a couple spots in there where I definitely felt out of control.
Now, if you don't really care as much about pure speed, or you tend to do longer all-day pedals, the Ripmo probably makes more sense. And honestly, even still, the Ripmo wasn't that far behind. Sure, I likely wouldn't win a race against myself on the altitude, but I also wouldn't say that I felt as held back as I initially expected that I might.
I gotta say, the changes I've made to this bike are helping a lot.
The Ripmo definitely is more nimble. The altitude is more stable. But both attributes are going to help out in different places on the track. Now, I finished off the day tired and getting a bit more loose than I would like on Bearded Lady. And while we didn't hit all of the features, I like to think that we checked off the important ones.
Well, we're definitely in it now.
Everything on that track is well within my abilities, but it wouldn't have hurt to be a bit more fresh and to have had a tow. Either way, stringing together a top to bottom is absolutely a great reason for me to go back.
Yeah! Yeah. Oh yeah. So yeah, you don't need much for speed.
I think for me, baseline is more about exposure therapy. The more time I spend descending really steep terrain, the more confidence I gain, the more comfortable I am chucking myself into unknown situations. Now, I've already noticed a big difference in my riding. In bike parks, my speed has crept up, and when I'm blind riding, I'm way more willing to let off the brakes. To be fair, that has something to do with the confidence in my components. My Hayes Dominions have been a boon to my riding.
A little pop will go a long way on this. That's doable. Drop in!
But that's not the only part of it. You still need that time getting used to those body positions when you're pointed down something that steep. And once you get comfortable riding something like Mr. Lifto, all of a sudden, a lot of steep sections start to look pretty flat.
I'm gonna do it again. I gotta go that a little bit faster there.
Anyway, this was an amazing day. Thank you so much for reliving it with me, and I hope you enjoyed the video. We'll see you next time.
There we go, that's chill. Much better.